To introduce you to our speaker of the legislature, the Gauteng Province Legislature, Ms. Ntombi Mehwe, and she will introduce the panel and we'll carry on the proceedings from there. You will have a chance to ask questions, but it will be very short because, as you can see, there's a lot of work that's going on in the hall, so we don't have that much time. So after her presentation, we will go through to the panel and you feel free to ask questions. Good afternoon all. I'm going to introduce myself that I've been introduced already. I wish to actually introduce our former president of South Africa, who is the chair of this high panel team, Honorable Mutlante. Next to him, in fact, on the left-hand side, we have Dr. Klassen, who also chairs one of the working groups. I think when she speaks, she will speak on her working group. Then immediately on the right-hand side of our Honorable Mutlante is Judge Pillay. I'm sure we all know our judge. Then next to her is Mama Dr. Shisama, who's also chairing one of the panels. So each one of them are actually chairing one of the task teams or working groups, as we call them in the high panel. So basically, in terms of the National Speakers Forum, of which I'm part of the National Speakers Forum, as you are aware that legislatures and the parliaments, their mandates is to ensure that we make laws. Since 1994, there are a number of laws that were made, and the purpose of those laws was to change the lives of the people of South Africa. But unfortunately, as the speakers, as we're doing our assessment, we realize that every day or every month, many people come to our institutions either to demand this or that, or also requesting that as the public representatives who are assigned the task of lawmaking is to ensure that we also hold the executive accountable for some of those laws that were passed by parliaments. Then the bigger question was, are these laws helping or not helping our people? But we didn't have an answer at that stage. Then we said, no, let us have a panel, and you can see even the integrity or even the work that they do in their respective fields. They are champions in terms of these other issues. And we're worried about also the reports that are coming out to say quality of life of our people have not changed, or they've changed, with a small margin. Therefore, this is the investigation that we asked the panel to actually investigate for us. And investigating, they might not sit in boardrooms, but they needed to engage with the people of South Africa. They've gone to other provinces, and Gauteng is but one of those provinces that actually they are visiting, also to investigate why are people or the lives of our people have not changed, or what is it that people feel that in as much as they might have been helped, but what are the gaps, and what is it that they require us to actually look at so that we can change, and these laws must actually help them. At the end of their investigations, obviously the report will come to the National Speakers Forum and will actually deliberate on the report, but also maybe take key decisions in terms of the report that is going to come to us. So let me hand over to Honorable Chair, who will actually take us through the process. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Speaker. You're free to ask questions of the panel. I think that's the best way to deal with it. We can go straight into that. Okay.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Sampier from SABC TV News. This is a question that I put out to the entire panel. Whoever's willing to answer it, that's okay. In terms of some of the remarks that were made, is the panel at all surprised the reaction to the NEDLEC's proposal that the minimum wage be set at 3.5? Are you all surprised by this reaction? Some not very happy with this minimum wage where it has been set, and does it correlate to some of the evidence that the high level panel has been able to gather so far?
My name is Brian Mazibo from Independent Media. What I want to know, how this work is going to feed from other works which have been done in South Africa by the National Plan Development. And also one question I have in terms of members of the panel. I respect them. I'm not disrespecting them. I've seen one person who's young. I'm also not seeing young female. The mixture of it, because they must be there so that their experience, which also they've acquired. How are you going to gather that? Thanks.
Hi, Slee from Jacaranda FM. Anyone can answer this question. Just on the accessibility of this Slee, Jacaranda FM News. The accessibility of these public hearings. A lot of people are at work between these hours. It's a Thursday. Exactly how constructive are these public hearings going to be?
You're going to remember all the questions.
I'm Silver Fegeta from Power FM. My question is directed to a person who's on the working group or on land reform, and to you, former President. I just want to know, since this is the 5th provincial public hearing, and you've been hearing members of the public and stakeholders talking particularly about the unhappiness on the issue of land, and it's a serious issue in South Africa, the issue of land reform. I just want to know, what are some of the biggest problems that they have legislatively with the current piece of legislation in relation to how it actually frustrates maybe or accelerates the rate at which land reform actually takes place?
Is there one more?
Mine. Okay. Okay.
There you go.
Mine is on your expectation out of this intervention. 1, 2. Are we ever going to have black and white earning the same salary for the same job description? 3. In terms of wealth distribution, can you guys explain it further, because it's rather vague. On the land issue, we're having a backlog, a very bad backlog of RTP houses. Now you're having people who are invading land, and when problem comes, you prioritize them to those particular houses. Whereas we have people from 1996 until, I don't know now, that still haven't got their houses. So how do you prioritize the issues that have been arising in that intervention? Because everything that was raised there, it is enshrined in the NDP of the country. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we'll leave it at that. And I would ask the panel to go ahead and answer the questions as they please.
Okay. Now, thank you for the questions. Let's start with the last question. This panel is not an extension of government. We are not in government. We're a panel of South African citizens that was, put together by the Speakers Forum to look into the impact of legislation passed since 1994 on the quality of life of South Africans, whether legislation serves as an enabler or an impediment, and therefore affects people negatively or positively. Ours is to listen, and once we are done with all these processes, because we call for submissions, written submissions from researchers, from stakeholders. Stakeholders are organized formations. We, over and above that, we interact with Chapter 9 institutions, and we access their reports. We'll also interact with the portfolio committees to access their reports as well. And at the end of it all, ours is to assess as to the impact and efficacy of legislation, and to then compile a report which would contain clear recommendations. For instance, if the impression at the end is that the land question has to be addressed by an omnibus legislation, Bamba Zonke, type of legislation, then we would come out with that kind of recommendation. Because through our, roundtables, we also hold roundtable discussions with experts and stakeholders and interested parties. So, if, for instance, in some communities, particularly with regards to mining rights, many communities complain that, their traditional leaders sign off agreements with mining companies and they never get to see the benefits from the proceeds of those operations. So the point I'm trying to clarify up front is that we are not government. That must be clear up front, and that is why we've been asked by the Speakers Forum, the lawmakers, in other words, in South Africa, want to know that all these raft of laws that they've been passing, what is the impact thereof? Now, coming to the remarks made in from the floor in the plenary now, we are not surprised that people are expressing unhappiness about the proposal on minimum wage. We expect that they give us feedback, very honest, candid feedback. That's what we expect from them, and to the extent that this may actually be a convincing pattern, we would also cover it in our final report. Yeah. I think I've covered 3 questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still one question.
Well,
Yeah,
there are a few. So, of course, we have our own views, but the very fact that this panel, which we say is an independent panel of 17 persons, the very fact that we want to hear from the public, or to tell you that we're not here to impose our own views. We want to hear the feedback from the public. And it's true, it's very limited, as one of you have raised. It's a weekday, we can't attract everybody. But we have extensive communication initiatives already. We are on community radios, we've called for submissions, so we want to reach as wide as possible a field of persons, including rural areas. So we're making every effort to ask people, if they can't reach us, to send us their written submissions or ask questions on the radio. That would be one. And what we're hearing is, obviously, people care about all their rights. You can't exercise the right to freedom or equality in gender if you don't have food in your stomach. So we are hearing people saying that they want delivery of all their rights that are enshrined in our Constitution.
Yep. Perhaps I can say something with regard to the question of inequality as to whether will there be equality among the different races. The Constitution requires that there be equality. That is a given, in the Constitution. The question is the government, the private sector, organizations, institutions, and so forth ready to actually ensure that there is equality? I would say that from the government point of view, they've set up policies, laws, policies, and structures that are supposed to help to achieve equality. The question is it being implemented by all structures within the country? I do believe that we as South Africans, if we are prepared to ensure we have equality, all of us ought to be able to stand up and ensure that equality occurs. And we can do so clearly by ensuring that when we go to an educational institution, we demand good quality education. Because the good quality education is a base upon which we can be able to compete, regardless of the race or the sex, the gender, or, locality. So if we have very good education, we ought to be able to compete equally. Data currently does show that there is a lot of inequality with regard to the quality of education that our people are actually getting. So I would argue that we all need to play a role. We cannot leave it up to government only. The government has passed the laws and policies, and programs are there, structures are there to monitor. Now it's up to us as a population to say, how do we ensure that our rights are actually respected? We've got to voice our concerns where we see inequality occurs. We have to play a role when we're employing people to ensure that we implement equality policies. So it's all up to us.
Maybe just to add on the question of land and the question about what are people saying about land. We've had a lot of people saying, as was said today, when the whites came, they didn't buy the land from us, so why should we have to compensate them to get the land back? So we've had broad questions of principle that address the legacy of dispossession and the inadequacy of current policy to really deal with that. But we've also had a lot of people coming and saying, I put in a claim to restitution, I've waited this many years, there's been no proper processing of my claim, or I put in a claim as a labour tenant, or I put in a claim as a farm worker. And so we're really looking at how specific laws have been implemented, how the budget for land reform has been spent, who it has benefited, and who's been left out, both in terms of class and race. And I think when we make recommendations, we're going to make them on the basis of specific findings about what's gone wrong in the implementation of the law, and where the gaps are in the law, and whether certain laws should be repealed. But it's also that comment that was made that these laws were meant to benefit the people, and the way they're being implemented benefits politicians rather than the people. I think we're hearing a lot of stuff like that as to where are the resources attached to these laws ending up compared with where they were intended to end up.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. My name is Cliff Shiko from Alex FM News. Madam Speaker, one would expect the Gauteng legislature to make thorough public participation like this of today. So my question would be were there public participation in all townships in Gauteng? And if so, if not, why so? And then Professor Clausen, the land question. As the panel, how are you going to make sure that the parliament speed up the process of land redistribution? Thank you.
Public participation is our mandate as a legislature, but also as parliaments. Maybe your specific question saying, have you gone to all the townships? We might not have gone to townships, but in terms of our public hearings and engagements, we normally invite stakeholders to wherever the venue that we are using, but we can still improve. We might have done it, but not enough. Where there are gaps, we need to ensure that we close those gaps and reach out to all the citizens of Gauteng. But maybe linked to your question is, what will happen to the report? I'm sure Honorable Mutlante has covered the issue to say they will bring a report to the National Speakers Forum. In the National Speakers Forum, we'll have to listen or take what is recommended to us and implement it. At this stage, it is still premature to say what is it that we will do, but we listen to the report at the end of these particular engagements, so it will help us a bit.
Well, just to say that we are looking at making very targeted recommendations, not general recommendations. And there are a series of really difficult questions as to why land reform has been so slow. Some of them to do with the willing buyer, willing seller policy, and what amount of compensation should be paid, and why an expropriation law has not yet been enacted that actually deals with the provisions in the Constitution which say we don't need to pay market value compensation. But I think what we're doing through the various roundtables is breaking those issues up as to what does the Constitution provide, what doesn't it provide, and why has there not been more use of the provisions in the Constitution that allow land reform and better implementation of the laws that we have got. For example, we've got a law that any farmer who evicts a person unlawfully, that's a criminal offence, and yet we've had not one single prosecution of a farmer, but we've got many documented cases of unlawful eviction. So it's also questions of political will, and it's questions of the alignment of different parts of government, including the police.
Thank you very much, members of the